No one can hear you if you scream in the night. Isn't that so, Mrs. Dudley?
No one lives any nearer than time. No one will come any nearer than that in the night. In the dark.
They're here.
This house is clean.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Brick Pit. I am Josh, your host that is haunted by the ghost of podcast past. And with me, as always, is Adam, the man who is haunted by the gas station sushi he ate this afternoon.
Hello.
And our other co-host, Jason, who proves that the living can haunt the dead.
Just your jokes.
They permeate through the veil. And today we have a special guest with us. We have John beaming in from the two best Star Trek podcasts that I'm speaking about right now. John, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad to have you. Before we get into today's topic, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the great work you do in the Trek community?
Thank you. I am producer John for Green Shirt, a newbie's Trek through the Next Generation, where my buddy Cam, who I've been making films and media with for over 2 decades now, is finally watching Next Generation. He never saw it when we were growing up. So we're going episode by episode 30 years later, and he's finally getting a chance to watch, and we'll discuss them every couple of weeks. And then currently I am the host of Open Pike Night, which is a call-in show themed podcast about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That comes out weekly, about 5 days after each new episode drops. People can send us audio clips, 90 seconds or less, and talk about every new episode of Strange New Worlds. We let it lead our discussion.
And I heard you're going to have an excellent guest on that show coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're getting one Josh from the Brick Pit podcast. I don't know if you guys have heard of that one, but yeah, fun.
Unfortunately, we have.
Sad.
No one else has.
I told Josh that if Anson Mount were to come on, I would boot him. And I was just sorry to break his heart, but I mean, it's fair, right? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as you don't boot him for Will Wheaton, I think he'd be okay with it.
That's fair. I mean,
that would be an enemy for life, sir.
Yeah, It's like, first off, I'd try and get them both on, but it's like, just the mouse would hover over the mute button for Josh.
You don't want me on with Will Wheaton.
Yeah. No. For Anson Mount. Well, for anybody. Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
If you put Josh and Will Wheaton on a podcast, you put that behind a paywall, and I would pay I would pay any amount to hear that.
Yeah, exactly.
It would just be Michael Scott doing his exit interview to Toby.
Toby,
who do you think you are?
Well, John, we're really glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this topic. I didn't get a chance to watch all the movies, but I've seen almost all of them, and I love.
That's okay. Josh didn't watch any of the movies.
So. Yeah, I just go to IMDb and just start picking stuff out.
There you go.
You're actually more prepared than we generally are. And by we, I mean Josh.
The running thing that our listeners have just started to pick up on is that Josh actually doesn't watch any of the movies that we talk about on any of the podcasts, and he just sees how long he can fake it.
Hey man, that's a lot of podcasting right there. I'll give you a hint. Like every once in a while, I'll spit out some fact about Star Trek that might be true, but it sounds good on the podcast. So,
well, that'll work too. In all seriousness, Josh and Jason are really they have such a depth of knowledge about all the films. I'm really the novice.
Okay.
I would say if you've gone back and listened to our entire back catalog, the number of times I've went, I've never seen that. Could you tell me more? and today will be no exception. So
yeah.
You're the audience surrogate.
I am. I'm the stand-in idiot is what I am.
Yeah. What are these things called?
Movies. Moving pictures while I never.
That train's coming right for us.
Yeah, you dive for the floor every time you see a train on the screen.
All right. Well, today I wanted to talk about I love horror films, and in horror films, it's such a there's so many micro genres and different aspects of it. And one of my favorite is the haunted house film. There's specific kind of like overarching tropes that fall into haunted house films that separate them out from general horror. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. And I wanted to start the discussion with talking about maybe anybody's experience with real haunted houses or real supernatural events, just to get us in the mood. Because I personally have had unexplained phenomenon happen in a house that I lived in, but I don't really believe in haunted houses. It's
kind of, your family just moved out while you were.
Yes, I woke up and everyone was gone. So it falls into my I hate people but love a crowd kind of thing that people love me for. Mm-hmm. So before I give you my riveting tale of terror in suburban Hattiesburg, Mississippi, have any of you guys had an unexplained experience in a house or anything?
I have created them for others.
That's good.
It generally starts with, what's that smell? It smells like something died in here.
I had a friend many years ago who lost his car keys, and I happened to find them in my pocket. And I would just like move his car randomly because I made a spare copy of his car key. And so he would come out in the parking lot, his car would be in a different place. And then eventually I got a house key to his house, and I'd move his furniture around when he wasn't home. He could never explain how these things had happened.
Man, that's a good one. That's
dirty, I also want to point out that's a very lawyerly way of describing it. They happen to be in my pocket.
Yeah, there's a lot of yada yada in that story. And then I just came across a copy of his key at Lowe's that I paid for. It was strange. Cash
you don't want to steal. No.
So what about you, Jason? Have you ever had any...
Nothing unexplained. I've, of course, explained to you about... and we've talked about it because we've had similar experiences, how your family screws with you and uses the concept of boogeymen and all that kind of stuff to keep you in line when you're a kid. But
are you going to make me talk about the Mogos on our podcast?
I wasn't going to, no. But now you have to.
You brought it up,
Fair enough. You got anything else, or am I just going straight into the
well, yeah, you go into you're the one.
This was not on the agenda, but we're here. So, yeah. So my parents and their infinite wisdom, and we were bad kids. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we were bad.
Shocking.
Yes, we were terrible. So they would tell us that there is this thing called Mogos that would come and get bad children, and that they could summon them by knocking on the wall. And if they knocked back, that meant the Mogos were listening. They would knock on the wall, and inevitably there would be a knock back, and it would scare the absolute mess out of us. Obviously, the other parent was on the other side of the wall knocking.
So you were both terrible children and stupid, is what you're saying?
Yes, and our parents were quite cruel, because like I would wake up in terror, and like, have you ever seen Chud? Like, in my mind, the Mogos were Chud, and I tried it on my kids, and they're like, "That's mom on the other side of the wall."
Yeah, like I said, my experience, because grew up in the Southeast, so it's very much that Celtic lineage and everything. And my mother and my great grandmother were living in an old house that used to be an old boarding house.
Yeah, okay.
And it had a second floor, and they didn't want us going on the second floor because there was nothing up there, and no one was maintaining anything like that. So they came up with the story about Rawhead and Bloody Bones lived upstairs. And so if we went upstairs, it would, of course, get us. And somebody occasionally would go up and step on the floorboards upstairs to do that, But the crazy thing is, when Josh and I were in college, a girl we went to school with, her grandparents used essentially the same story, the same boogeyman.
Rawhead and Bloody Bone.
Rawhead and Bloody Bones. Yeah.
Great name for monsters, too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's very evocative, especially to a kid.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. I think her deal was like, Rawhead would scare you, so you would run out the house, but Bloody Bones was his partner. It was waiting for you outside to catch you.
Ambush attack.
Yeah. So They're pretty sophisticated villains of
They're working
Southeastern
in tandem.
children. Yeah. When monsters start working together, you can't win.
Yeah. They're like raptors that way, you know?
I think that's the plot of the new Jurassic Park, basically.
That'll just get me to watch it more. I haven't been keeping up with them, but you know, to see the original cast back, all right, I'll go see that one.
That's how they get you.
Yep.
So what about you, John? Any spooky stories?
Not really. My adoptive dad used to try and make us believe that Bigfoot was outside the cabin when we were up there in the summers. But again, we all knew it was him. There were 6 of us kids. It's like, okay, well, apparently Bigfoot's out there, but he's not in here. So, gee, I wonder who could be leaving these ridiculous footprints around. And then I've been told I'm kind of like an off switch for ghosts and stuff. It's like I could walk into a haunted house and just be like, no, nothing. Like, be like, yeah, you're. John,
Are you substituting the word ghosts for women? Is that? And by haunted house, you mean any place women are?
Is any building? Yeah.
He is running 2 Star Trek podcasts. So.
Look, if anybody is pulling leg around here, it's the guy that's running 2 Star Trek podcasts.
Who works with robots? Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm sold.
No, not a whole lot. I've had some fun experiences with, there's a local theme park here in Utah, and some friends came down to visit, and I talked up this haunted house ride all day. Just how it's like, I've been to Disney, I've been to Universal. Somehow Lagoon just does it so much better. And this was the kids' haunted house ride. There's nothing. The scariest thing that happens in there is right at the end as it goes dark, and then 2 headlights flash and a horn honks. Then you bash through the doors to outside and you get off the ride. And man, I sold that so well. Like, I was so proud of the looks I got after I got off that ride.
That reminds me of my nephew and I were at the local state fair, you know, so it's full of carnies and barely put together rides. And there was a haunted house, and it was essentially just a tractor trailer. We went in and it was pitch black, no black lights, nothing. So like in our minds, we're like, all right, somebody's going to grab us or something. And we started freaking out. We were like teenagers at the time, just started flipping out. We eventually just ran through. There was nothing in the damn thing. It was literally an empty truck. That was the haunted house.
Nice.
But I learned a valuable lesson. I was like, you know, it's the monster you create that's really scary. And
it was in you all along.
Yes. The real monster was the friends we made along the way.
Which is why haunted house movies work so well.
Exactly.
Right?
And my favorite one on my list leans heavily into that. So do you guys think that there's a difference between a haunted house movie and like a ghost story? Because I can personally consider them almost subgenres.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's a different,
Yeah, I would say that a haunted house is more maybe a collection of spirits or just a sense of evil rather than just someone's ghost.
Uh-huh.
When I think haunted house story, what I think characterizes that as a subgenre is location.
Yes,
it's centralized to a place, generally speaking, or it could be a haunted car. I would consider that a version of a haunted or a haunted spaceship.
What
or something.
haunted car movie have you watched?
Christine?
Christine.
Don't get in the back seat.
Herbie the Love Bug is a soul trapped in a car.
This is true.
And what you don't realize
that's the gritty reboot is like Herbie just screaming in pain.
What you don't realize is it's actually the soul of Flipper in Herbie. That's what's it's a dolphin trapped in a car. That's what's happening.
That's a bridge too far, sir. We all know dolphins don't have souls.
That's right. or people who produce podcasts. That's
we call them the dolphins of the land.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, we'll never have a guest again, Adam. Thanks. He went straight for the kill, man.
He knows he's the weakest one of the podcast, so he has to go after the new guy.
It's fresh meat. That's I can't. I've insulted the two of you. There's nothing left. There's no there's no meat
it's
to get
the podcast prison.
You gotta assert your dominance, John. That's
I have to do with Rob all the time on Green Shirt. So yeah, we always have the alpha battles.
John's going to say something that's going to really hurt all of our feelings.
That's right. It'll just end the podcast forever.
Your audio really sucks. Oh.
That's not going to hurt our feelings. We already know that.
Fair enough. All right, so yeah, I think like the place and the it's interesting that I think houses in general, like older houses and stuff, do have a feel to them, but I don't know what it is in our psyche as humans that are like, because everybody's got tales of haunted houses. We had it growing up down the street from me was where there's an old house that had burned down years ago that had been reputed to be haunted, and like kids would like dare each other to go into the land to Cahill Manor, but the place had a vibe, and it's like, is that a creation of hearing all the stories, or did it really have a vibe? But
do you remember when you were a kid and you'd get like, if you were ever left home alone, like the earliest first times, you may have been different if you had siblings, but I was an only child. Being alone, and I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 or 12, somewhere in there. It was middle school probably. And it's spooky. It's every noise is like, what was that? You know?
Well, it's not just that. When I was in my early 20s, I was working at a grocery store and I was an assistant manager. And so I had to close one night. So I'm by myself in this grocery store, and when there's no one else there, and you turn off the music and everything else, and then you hear all the other sounds, like it is a frightening place. It's like the cooler kicked on. I was like, what the hell was that?
So you reminded me. I worked in high school, or just after graduating high school, I worked in a movie theater, and I would close like after the
fun.
Like the 3 a.m., 3 a.m., the last movie goes off, everybody gets out, and I have to walk the place to make sure there's not any like people hiding out somewhere. That is scary.
Walking through these big empty rooms, and and then you go upstairs to the projection area,
room,
and back when it was just the platters and everything, like that was always fun.
And this was like the late 90s too when I was doing this, and the big thing then is when they had those coupon dispensers on like the aisles.
Oh yeah.
And you don't realize it during the day because everybody's moving around shopping. Those things make noises.
Yeah. The background noises become the only noise, and all of a sudden you've never heard it before. And then same thing, I worked at a really big facility, and you'd be walking around middle of the night, middle of December, there's you and 5 other people in the building, maybe 4 other, and the building's a quarter mile long. And you'd see somebody out of the corner of your eye, and you're like, hey, you call on the radio, like, hey, what's up? Need a hand? Like, no, I'm down in my section browsing the internet. What are you talking about? And it's just the being alone somehow just activates that part of your brain.
Yeah, the human mind is its own worst enemy.
Oh yeah.
So there's like people that go to these sleep deprivation chambers for like relaxation. I'm like, man, don't you start hallucinating? Like, that's like the last thing I need is to be locked in my own brain with no stimulation. Like,
that's hell on earth. That's what
I know me. I don't want to be alone with me. Like, have you met me? Like your brain is going to start working against you. It's going to start seeing patterns. It's going to start seeing movements and hearing stuff that's not there.
Yeah.
So I think that brings up a good point of like, as far as the genre of haunted house films, that they are very psychological, because there's typically, at least in the first part of the film, there's like, am I crazy? Or people are gaslighting you, like, oh no, you didn't see an old man smoking in that window. And then later on they're like, old man smoker died in that
in that window.
In that very window. Like, well,
remember that point you just made, because it'll come up when you bring up one of your movies later I want to make. So
old man smoker.
The gaslighting and the hallucinating aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay.
But
well, yeah,
that'll be relevant later.
So yeah, I think
that's a clue that'll help us later.
All right, Mickey Mouse.
Old foreshadowing, people.
So creepy old house, an untethering of reality, and a lot of the films do remain ambiguous as far as like, did that really happen? And sometimes, like, I really hate that in films, but in like haunted house films, it kind of just sits right. You know, everybody, if you haven't had an experience like that, you at least know somebody that's just like dead on. Like they just believe, and you're like, all right, man, because your choices are like to like let it go, or I can't be friends with you because that's crazy. You didn't see a woman floating in the hallway.
Yeah. Have you talked to your doctor about lithium?
Right. Yeah. I opened the door and there was a Civil War soldier. It's like, why aren't there ever like modern dudes? Like, what? There was a guy playing Xbox. Yeah. And it turned out he had died there playing Xbox.
There was a DoorDash driver.
Yeah. It's like past lives. Like my dad, he did dabble in some of this stuff, and he would do in the 60s. They would do past life regressions like through hypnosis.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever really had just like everybody was Nero. Nobody was like just like
the stable boy.
Right. Yeah. Like, oh man, I worked in a coal mine and then died, had a crap life. I sure am glad it's the 20th century.
Yeah. The medium is like
at the age of 8.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's like you are currently the most interesting person you've ever been. Like, I don't think you want to hear about this. I mean, it'll make you feel better about your crappy life.
That's
but
man, was like, dude, this is peak. This is the life this is the life of your future lives will remember and be like, that was awesome.
Yeah. General Patton believed that he had lived like 2,000 years. He thought he was the reincarnated.
He thought he was an eternal warrior.
Yeah. Which makes you wonder, where is he today? Like, was that his final form? Was he patting out? I'm going to die in a Jeep accident. That's how I'm going to go. The world's best 2,000 years of warrior experience. I'm going to roll over in a Jeep.
Slipped like on a banana.
Three Stooges episode is how I'm going out. You know,
the irony was palpable.
Maybe he was just too embarrassed to come back after that. Like that was.
Well, wasn't that like the planned sequel for Gladiator? Was like he was going to like keep reincarnating into like different warriors,
which I would have watched. I mean, you know,
I would have watched Russell Crowe. I mean, we are going to watch Russell Crowe be immortal coming up in Love and Thunder. So,
yeah. It took me a while to realize who that was because I wasn't looking at the cast. I just watched the trailer a few times. Like, oh my god! All right.
Who's this fat guy with curls? Yeah. Oh, wait. He's throwing a phone at somebody. That must be Russell Crowe.
Who's this bad guy? He's doing a weird voice. Oh, it's Christian Bale. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Now they're never going to come on this podcast.
Christian Bale doing the Uncle Fester origin story.
Yeah. I mean, I would host a podcast where Russell Crowe and Christian Bale came on and just unloaded on me the whole time. It's like, bring it, you know. Again, premium content.
Have a goofy smiling face. Yeah, I am a piece of garbage. Yeah. I am a worm, sir. This is great. Yeah. We've got dozens of downloads now. All right, so yeah, haunted house movies. They're awesome. I guess I will go ahead and start because I do want to talk about this film because I watched this film, I say late in my movie watching career because I was like a senior in college and that was a lifetime ago. It came on AMC and I was just immediately drawn in, and it's the 1963 film The Haunting by Robert Wise, which is to me just the ultimate of haunted house films. The cinematography is absolutely amazing. There's one shot that is a special effects shot in the whole film, and it has this sense of dread the whole time, and it's terrifying. And the house really is a character. So if you haven't seen it, there is a 1999 version with Owen Wilson that is the worst remake I've ever seen in my life because it took everything that was great about the original was like, let's put a bunch of CGI in here. And it's god awful.
I love that Owen Wilson is your go-to for that Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones movie. Like, yeah, terrible movie. That movie has a giant cast.
It does. It does. I just in my mind, that movie is like a CGI cherub fireplace, like looking at Owen Wilson going, oh wow.
Yeah. At least he has a good death in it, so you know.
Yeah. So
I think the issue is that he thinks it's a Wes Anderson film.
Wes Anderson,
me or
you, both.
Yeah. Owen Wilson and I both thought it was a Wes Anderson film. We were both deceived. So yeah, but it's interesting that like the remake leans very heavily into this house is haunted. But the original and the book as well, it's one of my favorite books by Shirley Jackson. Of those of you who went to high school will know her as the writer of The Lottery.
Not the winner of the lottery.
No, but she wrote other books that are really good. And The Haunting, I think it's The Haunting of Hill House is the actual name of the book. Fantastic. And it's a little less ambiguous than the movie, but it's still kind of fuzzy on the edges of like, did this really happen? Or is this woman kind of unstable and she pulls people into her delusions? Really good. And obviously, like Sam Raimi watched The Haunting because I saw Evil Dead 2 before I saw The Haunting, and I kept going,
oh yeah,
I kept going, oh look, that was an Evil Dead 2. Excellent film. I don't know if you guys have seen it or
forever ago. Yeah,
I was going to go back and watch some of these films, but then I decided I was in more of a Sam Peckinpah move and watch The Wild Bunch.
I can't blame you.
I've heard of movies.
I saw a Wikipedia article on them that I've bookmarked to read later.
Adam has seen every Halloween Town movie that was produced by Disney for the Disney Channel. There are 4 of them, by the way. Halloween Town Goes to College, I think, was just a money grab. But the others, I really respect the vision. John, what about you? Any that stick out head and shoulders above the rest?
I do like old haunted house movies, but I really, really enjoy not the Haunting remake, but the early 2000s. Like Ghost Ship is one of my favorite haunted movies because it is, it's your standard, whatever the haunting is the, this is the manifestation of what several characters' traumas is like. Or, it's just a bunch of Nazi ghosts on a boat and this crew is trying to salvage and these poor bastards just end up in the middle of it. And yeah, there's a little bit of the manifested trauma, but overall it's like you throw in a really badass scene just showing how everybody on the boat died with some cool rap underneath in the 1940s. Like, all right, I'm all in. And I've always enjoyed the guessing game of the who's going to make it, the who lives.
We play that game on this podcast with each other all the time.
Bad news.
I'll see you next time, maybe.
Don't answer the door. That's all I'm saying.
Because like a slow burn, almost no effect, psychological haunting is a well-made movie is a well-made movie, and I'll enjoy it. But sometimes it's like just have fun with it too. So I enjoy those kind of movies. I do enjoy parts of the Haunting remake, especially, like I said, Owen Wilson's death. I'm like, all right, we're just going for it. We're just going to have some ridiculous stuff happen. I get what I'm signed up for.
Sure. And I tend to be, I'll admit I'm hypercritical, but I also I delineate between film and movies, and some people don't, but that's like Marvel movies are movies, and it's like I want to see explosions, I want to see Captain America punching people, and that's great. It doesn't. I don't expect anything more than that. But then, I do think that there is an artistic side. I think things can be multi-layered. And yeah, sometimes like House on Haunted Hill is a very just fun, Vincent Price screwing with people's heads and, cheap skeletons falling from the ceiling kind of romp.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So there's actually a really good, so I went to watch House on Haunted Hill again. I've probably seen it 15 times. We used to watch it every Halloween when I was growing up because it was like my dad's favorite Vincent Price movie, but I was going to watch it again before the cast. So when I looked it up, there's an on-demand riff tracks of House on Haunted Hill.
I've been afraid to watch it.
It's actually really good.
I know, but I'm afraid that it will
ruin House on Haunted Hill for you. Oh yeah, it'll totally do that, but it's totally worth it. It's really good.
I think, John, speaking to what you're talking about, it's kind of the same as why we like slasher movies.
Yeah.
The fun of slasher movies is who's going to get it when and how.
Yeah. And I'm if you do if you do practical effects in a haunted house or a slasher movie, if you can actually see the physical of it and it's not just all computer generated, I'll enjoy it a little bit more. Yeah.
Horror in general tends to I give it a little more wide berth because there's almost, it's kind of the B moviness is almost baked into it. It's hard to be really serious in a horror film. And when they do, it tends to kind of be laughable, it's like, so it's very difficult to pull that off. So there's some inherent, I don't want to say cheese or camp, but you can't look at it like Citizen Kane.
Right. Like I love the movie Ravenous. It's not necessarily a haunted house. It's more of a just straight up horror movie, but psychological horror. But it's like, this is a ridiculous concept. We're going to have fun with it being ridiculous a little bit, but I enjoy how dedicated everybody is to just going all in on that movie.
Adam, what about you? What's your number one?
Absolute hands down all-time favorite is The Shining for me. Yeah. I think what you mentioned is really, so as you said at the outset, you're
is
a huge
this the
fan.
Smoking Man thing?
No, that'll be on one of your one of your movies that you bring up later. But this is not the X-Files. This is not the Smoking Man. No, The Shining. I think so. A couple things about that. One is that you mentioned that you really like horror movies in general. Like that's you have a subscription to what is the streaming service? Shudder. Yeah.
Shudder, please pay us money. Yeah. Shudder is great.
Give Josh a free subscription. He'll plug it every week as he already does for free. So
why would they pay me when I do it for free?
They got the milk. They got the milk. Why do they need the cow? Right? That's
Mama told me.
It's not my favorite. Like we talked about this in our Halloween episodes last year. I enjoy a good scary movie, but as I've gotten older, life scares me enough that I don't need to watch scary movies anymore. They don't bring me the enjoyment. But with my kid,
what a bitter tape.
Yeah, but with my daughter getting a little bit older, I've started to open those doors a little bit more because she's at the age where she can watch some of these scary movies. And watching a scary movie with a fresh person who's not jaded with life and cynical yet, it's actually fun to watch her watch scary movies now. That's kind of entertaining. But anyway, having said all that, The Shining is a standout for me because it's a movie that I will watch. Cinematography in this movie is fantastic. It's
sure.
Yeah. Anybody's going to say that, right? But also it's one of those movies for me that every time you watch it, I catch a new thing that I didn't see before, and the attention to detail that Kubrick uses and just his focus on like the subtleties of things. I'll give you a quick example. One of them is the most recent watching is I didn't notice how many scenes have shots that involve a mirror and how Kubrick uses mirrors in The Shining to convey different messages and to do different shots. There's a scene where Danny comes in and he's talking to his dad, and his dad's supposed to be taking a nap and Danny's going to grab a toy real quick. The whole scene's shot from behind Jack Nicholson. He's sitting on the bed and you're watching him through the mirror. So you're seeing his face and Danny's face and his back at the same time. Mm-hmm. And the angle of the camera in that scene is such that through the mirror, Jack Nicholson's face looks menacing. and it's just so well done. Like it took me anyway, and maybe a more astute viewer would see this, but it took me many viewings to catch something like that. When he's talking to himself, walking down the hallway, when he's starting to crack, he's passing a row of mirrors on one side, and you can see him talking through the mirror, things like that. Of course, and then the red rum scene being,
right.
it's the mirrors, the big reveal in that. Anyway,
I just want to point out that Jack Nicholson looking menacing, that's like the default.
He was actually very relaxed and sleeping in that scene.
He was actually taking a nap. They just filmed him
when you take out his batteries and put them back in, that's how he turns on. It's just looks like he's going to murder you.
The Shining was worth breaking Shelley Duvall's mind.
It's totally worth it.
That's the terrible take. I love Kubrick. I think Kubrick was a master of the craft. I also think he was he was a big old jerk. Mm-hmm. And I know that Stephen King does not like the adaptation. I think it was last summer I finally got around to reading the book. Mm-hmm. And
it's completely different. Yeah.
It's completely different.
That's the miniseries they made in the 90s.
And Kubrick made an adaptation, and the adaptation, it is a fantastic film. Yes. It's a masterwork. But I can understand being the creator of that. In the book, it's very much a man struggling to do the right thing, who is in the grips of alcoholism, who is brought down by these outside forces. Stephen King himself was struggling with addiction. Yeah. And the movie is much more focused on it's much more Jack being the center of it's to me less the overlook and more of Jack being the person going, there's more agency on his side. So
it's very clear from like that opening scene that he's a troubled individual.
Right. Yeah. And he's a troubled individual in the book as well, but it's the focal point, what I'm saying. Yeah, he succumbs to outside forces, where I think in the movie he succumbs to internal forces. Yeah. And I think that's a very personal book for King, and I can see why he was. I think because essentially Danny Torrance was Joe Hill. So there's a lot going on with that, but as a movie separated from the author, I think it's fantastic. It is scary.
Oh,
it's straight up scary.
So, couple quick trivia things for this that I've always. Most everybody knows it. Everybody knows that it's supposed to be the Overlook. Overlook is actually based off of a lodge in Colorado. That's a real place. You can go stay or whatever. But most of it was shot on a soundstage, so none of the things look exactly the same. But the outside, the exterior shots were actually shot from a place called Timberline Lodge, which is in Oregon. Yep. And you can go, and it actually it has that look to it that kind of gives you that sense. But all the way they decorated the interior shots and stuff is all based off of the Ahwahnee Lodge in Yosemite National Park, and that combination of like Native American and sort of Mayan look that they have going with the blue or with the red and the gold, all that comes from Yosemite Park. So the creative director that did all the planning for this had stayed in all three of these places and kind of made an amalgamation in what they called the most horrific decorating style ever. And Stephen King actually stayed. So the whole premise is Stephen King actually stayed in the real hotel that the Overlook is based off of in Colorado, and he had a nightmare while he was there, and that became the basis for the story. So
he had a nightmare that somebody would adapt his book into a terrible movie, and he was just like,
and he would be plagued by signing royalty checks the rest of his life. So
yeah.
Poor Stephen King. Oh, how traumatic.
You leave Stephen alone. He's going to be on this podcast one day.
I've been to his house.
That'd be cool.
You were the guy that they caught in the attic.
Look, I've read Misery more times than anybody else. He's going to be on this podcast.
That is. I don't know if I would admit that out loud.
Pet Cemetery is based off of Josh's personal story. That's.
I'm the guy that has the van that says like that Stephen King killed John Lennon and drives around Maine. Just giving my identity away. Jason, we haven't heard from you. What's your fun haunted house movie?
I can't say specifically is this the first. This is the first I remember. I actually saw this in the theaters, and I was like 4 when it came out. So
Holy cow.
very, very bad parenting choices were made here.
It was only rated PG though.
Exactly.
It was early
It's a
80s PG.
It's a family. It has kids in it. It's a family movie.
Yeah.
That's the way it works in the
As
80s.
far as the MPAA went.
There's a kid on the poster.
PG.
How bad could it be? Yeah.
So that is Poltergeist.
They're here.
Yeah, it's a movie. Toby Hooper is listed as director. It's come out in the past few years that Spielberg essentially directed it.
That's still up for contention. So Mick Garris on Twitter just this past week was very adamant that that Toby Hooper did direct it. I don't know. I wasn't there. I would assume Mick Garris probably knows better than I do.
It has a lot of Spielberg energy.
It does have Spielberg energy, and it would not surprise me if Spielberg did not direct some of the larger set pieces.
Yeah.
Because the climax is very, very Spielberg-esque.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the pool scene is very Toby Hooper.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
down
It's
to
very
having like
interesting.
real skeletons in the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting mix of those two guys' style. But yeah, like I said, this is PG, but it's early 80s PG before PG-13 came out. This is one of the movies that caused the PG-13 rating to be that and Gremlins, and I think maybe Temple of Doom or Indiana
Temple of Doom,
Jones.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Basically,
yeah,
Spielberg.
Basically
Spielberg ruined it for everybody.
Yeah. Hey, what if he just rips the dude's heart off? Kids are cool with that,
Just
right?
holds it up.
Yeah,
I
It's
mean,
got no
It'll still
MPA.
be beating, so
Yeah.
he's not
It's got
dead.
the movie's got a kid in it. It's PG.
Exactly.
I think
They
you've
wouldn't
cracked
put
the
a kid
code
in a
on
movie that's not PG.
80s ratings. If there's a
Yeah.
kid in it, it cannot be rated R.
Hey, are they eating out of monkey skulls? Yeah, but that's fine. There's a kid. Yeah.
There's two.
It's a monkey.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of kids in it.
That's actually
There's more kids than adults in this movie.
Oh, nothing like action, adventure, and child slavery.
it's a heartwarming film for the whole family. It's
Are the kids okay? Well, yeah. If you burn them a little bit, they're fine. Like,
The kids
From
go
the
home,
director that brought you E.T.
and the kids go home to their starving village, right?
Yeah.
So everything's okay. That they're not mine. They're in the village with no food. Oh.
yeah, but they got their rock, so it's
Right.
fine. Yeah.
got the
It is
There you go.
just like the West goes in and just leaves them high and dry.
Here,
The
eat a
message-
rock.
Poltergeist.
So, scary thing about Poltergeist is that I didn't know
Everything.
is
Yeah.
so Carol Ann, the girl, the little girl, she died at 12 years old
After the third film.
The third
Yeah.
film, right after it.
in
Yes.
real life, and
She had cancer or something. I can't remember. What
she had a heart condition that was
Ghost
That's what it was.
cancer.
ghost
Yeah, yeah,
cancer.
I think
it
it
was
was
a
a-
poltergeist that got her. Is what happened. Is you play with fire too much on that set, and then they come and get you. That's how it
No,
works.
it was the guy who was the villain in the second one. I think he had cancer. Like he was like terminal when they hired him.
And he gave it to
Oh,
her.
geez.
Yeah.
It was a gift. Why would you?
You can't return that. No, but he died of cancer like right after the second movie came out, or right before it. But like I said, in the second one, the old preacher, who's very gaunt and everything, it was like because he had terminal cancer. That's why he looked that way. But anyway, the first film though, like I said, it's got that weird mix of Hooper and Spielberg energy.
Yeah.
Like I said, because there's the scene where they open the door, and there's almost some playful scenes in there, but they open like the kids' bedroom door, and like the toys are all flying around, and there's like an Incredible Hulk Mego figure riding a pony and stuff like that.
Right. That would be like right out of E.T.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when they first start figuring out about the poltergeist, and the mom puts Carol Ann on the floor and she slides across that. That's very Spielberg.
Yes.
Craig T. Nelson going to the bathroom and ripping his face off in the mirror is not. That's very Toby Hooper.
The clown snatching the kid.
Yes.
That's the clown is what did me in as a child. Was like the clown coming out from under the bed.
Yeah.
That led me directly to destroying my Charlie McCarthy doll.
Straight in the trash. Look, you sit there and you here's two things I don't understand. Brick Pit right here. Ready? Okay. Here we go. Number one, this kid has been in a real honest to God haunted house. He lived it. His sister was in the ethereal plane, right? Uh-huh. It's moving day. They're going to spend one more night in the house. He puts that clown in a chair facing him. No, there's zero chance that, because the kid's already demonstrated earlier in the film by covering it with his Chewbacca jacket that he's scared of the clown.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've experienced this whole otherworldly thing, and you're just going to put that scary freaking clown right back in the chair facing your bed? That's not going to happen.
Have you met kids? They're stupid.
You're forgetting a very important thing about kids. They're
kids
not
are
very
stupid.
bright.
Kids.
That kid particularly, apparently.
Yeah. I will say that as a 4-year-old,
Josh. That's where's that noise on the other side of the wall coming from?
As a 4-year-old, I did very well. I made it up to the scene where the tree ate the kid.
Yeah.
Trees eating kids is scary.
That's when it was time to go.
Did your parents cover your eyes as you were heading out of the theater, or was it?
They were probably yelling at him because they wanted to finish the movie. Man up, Jason. Eddie's little soldier gonna cry again.
You can go wait in the lobby with the other losers.
It was my stepfather took me, and we were walking out, and he was like, "You do not need to tell your mother about this."
That's something a stepfather in a haunted house movie would say. Like, that's exactly the kind of, that's some Amityville, right there. That's...
Let's not bother mom with this, okay? I'm already on
get
thin
some
ice.
Ice cream, and we're gonna go home and not say anything about this.
Cut to Jason hiding under his covers, and the stepdad goes, "He's fine. He's 12. He's a man."
I saw this movie as an adult. I didn't see it when I was young,
and it still scared you.
It's still. I mean, it's a spooky
It's a scary movie. Yeah.
But because my brain is the way it is, when they brought in the fixer, the woman not the first woman, but the second woman, the woman who says this house is clean,
mm-hmm.
her voice indicates immediately she's a villain. Right? Everything about this woman says, no, she is the problem. There's something about that.
I always found her very comforting.
No.
Yeah,
she's got that weird.
Clearly an Adam problem.
No, yeah. She's got that weird, almost like she's like a 70-year-old woman, and she's got this child's voice.
Yeah.
Your misogyny showing, man.
And every time I hear that, my skin crawls. I'm like, something's not right with this human being.
What do you have against short people, Adam?
It's clear upon rewatches, though, that she is a bit of a charlatan.
Yeah.
I think she doesn't really believe it the first time she's there. She's one of these.
Yeah.
Which, that's a fun trope for these kind of movies. It's call an expert. It's like, sure, I'm an expert. Oh, wait, by the end, it's like, okay, I'm actually kind of an expert. So, yeah.
Good choice, though, Jason.
Oh, yeah. So, my older brothers would watch horror movies all the time. And I would sit with my back against the refrigerator and listen, because I was too scared to watch. But
I would sit
my God, when I finally watched Friday the 13th, I was like, man, this is not nearly as scary as what's going on in my little brain.
I was the mind.
Yeah. So it falls back to why I like The Haunting so much, is that it's it makes you fill in these gaps, talking about how terrifying the nursery is, and it's just the slow dolly shot to the door, and you're like, oh my God, and they don't even open the damn door.
There,
yeah, definitely a highlight among the and when I want to do a show on cursed films, because Poltergeist, after that little girl died, was one of those things that was there's all these rumors about, and then there was the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Lots of kids died in 80s movies.
Yeah, they did.
Many Bothans died to bring you the Twilight Zone movie.
Yeah, especially Twilight Zone. Was like, oh yeah, some kids died. Like, how'd they die? Oh my god. Okay, yeah.
I don't see how they could keep that whole. I would just reshoot, like make a new vignette or something, because it's like that's like, oh, and they died in real life.
Yeah, it's like, oh, can you sign this waiver that we can use the footage?
Yeah.
Is that cool? Sure, it's the 80s, I guess.
It's one of those things. It's like, I love John Landis's films so much, but then you like read what happens. There's like, I don't think I like John Landis.
Right. It's kind of like a musician whose politics you disagree with. You're like, I like your music, but come on, man. Mr. Nugent. I don't think you're qualified to speak on that.
Kid Rock, yes. Ted Nugent, no.
Yes, Kid Rock is a pillar of political philosophy.
Say our community. That was what you were trying to say.
I am a closet Kid Rockian.
That's you.
Kid Rockian.
Our community. That's what you.
I want us to stop with these tasteless jokes, because we all know that Josh votes on the Juggalo platform.
Good for you.
If he's not a juggalo, vote no. That's our official platform. We don't.
I was going to say, I would love to see those signs up around town. Just
ICP
that.
for me. That's what it is.
Fago, yes.
Yes.
Tax bonds, no.
Please sponsor us in St. Cloud Possible.
If we have Juggalo fans out there, stop
Don't kill
listening.
us. Yeah.
Stop being fans.
You will not find some scissorp in this podcast.
We would not explain to you how magnets work.
They are, in fact, a miracle. So, moving on. Another one of my favorites, and this is something I watched on Shudder, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and I didn't realize how, because it's weird. There's so much film out there that like you can only know so much, and so my wife and I watched Changeling. I was like, oh wow, George C. Scott, a Haunted House film. I was like, man, that was awesome. I've never heard of it. And I started doing research, and it was like, this is like the highest grossing movie in 1972. And like, I was like, really?
So this is the movie that I have a lot to talk about. So
sweet.
So set it up, and then I got things to say.
George C. Scott buys a haunted house or rents it. Like that's the story. Patton.
So that's
versus a haunted house.
So that entirely is the whole. So first of all, if you've not, John, have you seen this movie?
I have not. No.
Okay.
It's on Shudder.
Jason,
I do have a Shudder subscription. I'll have to go watch it now.
I think it's also on. It might be on HBO Max, but because I had not seen it before you mentioned it, and then I went and watched it recently, so it's very fresh in my mind. George C. Scott is if for those of you who don't know who he is, but he played Patton. He's a man's man, kind of actor, right?
Yeah, he's the grandpa in Angus. Everybody knows that. Yeah.
So that's a good reference, actually. Here's the thing.
That may be one of the best references.
That's funny. I don't know.
You're going to come on our podcast and reference
This has been the Brick Pit, everybody. There's nothing else to say. Thanks for joining us.
I'm beside myself.
Excellent.
I'm flooded with memories now.
Josh is now angry that he hasn't.
Didn't think of that. That's what it is. You're no longer welcome here, John. You've stolen Josh's thunder.
Through the magic of editing, I will.
Suddenly, that will be your brilliant observation.
You know what? If you do like I am recording a separate track of this, but if you record yourself saying it, I'll be like, yeah, he said that. It's a great reference.
The premise is basically what Josh says. So George C. Scott is a composer. He's a concert pianist, and he writes music or whatever. Interesting side note. that piece that he plays for the he there's a scene where he's supposedly like a college professor and he's playing a concerto for people. He didn't know how to play piano, but he learned how to play that, and he actually played it for that scene.
Oh, wow.
Which is neat, right? That's just a cool tidbit. There's things like that. Movie stuff like that makes me excited. I don't know why that stuff interests me, but there it is. Anyway, so here's the problem with this movie. George C. Scott is too in charge of life. No, yeah, basically. No, here. So when we see a scary movie, we expect Shelley Duvall losing her ever-loving mind.
Mm-hmm.
We expect the mom in Poltergeist to be just gone over the bend crazy, right? A big part of what you said, Josh, was that early in most haunted movies, like even House on Haunted Hill, even if it's gaslighting, there's an element of this person's crazy. Mm-hmm. You need them to be crazy so that you aren't crazy, right? It's them. It's the person in the film.
It's a fragile person,
right?
Being faced with demons and either, surviving or not.
George C. Scott is the kind of guy immediately in this movie. It's like instantly in this movie, he shows up at this house. It's haunted. Bad things are happening. A young boy. So the premise is, sorry, I'm stealing your thunder, Josh.
No, you're doing great doing my job.
Yeah, sorry.
Keep doing that.
I would have chosen this movie had I seen it before you said it. So thanks for recommending it. But the basic premise is that in the history of this house, a dad or stepdad drowns a disabled boy in a tub in the attic in the early 1900s so that he can replace the boy in order to inherit a bunch of money that's
with an able-bodied
orphan,
okay,
which is what they call the Changeling.
Well, yeah, in Changelings, and I guess it's Irish or some kind of Celtic
English,
folklore.
or Swedish, or so. Yeah. So
they steal babies and replace them with fairies or whatever.
Somewhere over there in Europe.
Over there in
it's one place.
Yeah. So that's the story comes from this idea, and then George C. Scott is battling with this U.S. senator who is the descendant of this Changeling. None of that matters. The problem is...
Other than that's the plot.
That's the plot. The problem is George C. Scott goes in this massive mansion. He's going to rent it for like a summer or a year so he can have some time to compose in silence in this nice town. So he goes to the Historic Society, and they tell him there's not a lot of records on this house, but it's for rent, and we need somebody to kind of stay here and keep it up or whatever. So he's like, yeah, I can do that. Moves in, immediately realizes that it's haunted. And it's the way they do it's great. Like he's recording himself playing the piano, and he's playing a new piece that he'd just written, like brand new, straight from his mind to the piano. And then he goes exploring this house and finds a boarded up room, and it leads to the attic, and he finds a music box, and the music box plays the song he just wrote.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's cool, right? That's a really cool. But George C. Scott goes, this house is haunted. That's spooky. I don't like that. And what does he do? He just keeps coming back night after night, totally nonplussed. Like,
100%. He's George C. Scott.
Yeah, 100%. Like, nothing bothers this man. Hires a medium to come in and do a seance where things get real freaky. Right? Seance scene's awesome. Like 100% worth watching just for the seance scene because things like shake and rattle. It's like your traditional, like stereotypical seance. George C. Scott, totally not shaken by this. Just keeps coming back and spending the night. Like tussles with the bad guys in the haunted house. Solves the mystery. It's like a Scooby-Doo, but
it's
with
awesome.
It's like Scooby-Doo, but instead of being like spooky mystery needs to be solved, it's like your dad's fixing to change the oil in the car.
Well, I was going to say, it's like your dad in a Scooby-Doo film.
Yeah,
like,
he's just procedural about, that knocking's because it needs an oil change. We're just going to fix the oil. That's fine. And he's like totally, he never gets upset. He's just too collected. And that bothers me.
I was going to say, you're selling me on this even more. I like the sound of that.
That to me is the plus to the film, is that like, he is like, it's freaking George C. Scott. He's like, I don't care there's a damn ghost in here. I've written this house. Like,
basically, that's exactly the move.
It's like,
I paid to be here. You haven't.
It is like your dad or your grandpa in a haunted house going, no. That ghost ain't paying rent. Like, that's awesome. Like, and until things get super hardcore, then he's like, oh, maybe I should leave.
Maybe I should get the house is on fire. That was the point. Like, the whole building is burning down. He's like, yeah, I guess I gotta go.
I think that the Changeling turns more into, it's like there's a haunted house. The house is an aspect of the story, but it's also, there is an investigative component to it.
It's a mystery that needs to be solved. Which
happens in a lot of I'd say more modern haunted house films, like the Conjuring films are very much like, why is this happening and how to, versus like, this house is just freaking evil and, you know, it's going to drive you crazy and you die.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. Like, okay, with different types of haunted house movies, like there's something needs to be solved. And when you solve it, the haunting is done. And there's others where it's like, no, it's just a haunted place, or it's like, no, it's just a normal place. The person is facing their demons and somehow it's manifesting. Like I like the different types of haunting and haunted houses there are.
Stir of Echoes kind of falls into that. And I don't, Stir of Echoes like had the unfortunate timing of coming out at the same time as The Sixth Sense.
Which is one of my haunted house movies. Yeah,
which
is The Sixth Sense. Yeah,
yeah, but it did it a big disservice because like that's such a good film, and I don't know if I would call it a haunted house film, but it certainly like is in the neighborhood because
it's in the haunted house neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a haunted neighborhood film.
Yeah. It's just a rental, which is one of the lines that I made.
It's an Airbnb.
It's an Airbnb haunted house. But it's an unlicensed one, so that's what makes it spooky.
Exactly. Yeah.
The authorities haven't caught on
towel
yet.
For 4 people.
It's owned by somebody in Qatar. It's an out of state.
So John, I'm interested. Tell me your thoughts on The Sixth Sense.
So I have always, obviously it's a story about a kid who can see dead people, but I've enjoyed, and it was,
whoa. Is that what was going on in that movie?
Man, ruined.
But then he got pulled out of the Matrix, so it's all good. But I mean, it was years later. I'm sure it's not an original thought, but like, it is a haunted house story from the point of view of the ghost haunting his own house after he died. Because that's, if you look at just the story of his wife, she's flirting with a guy and all of a sudden the window in her shop shatters because the ghost of her husband threw a brick at it.
That's a really cool take. Like the way you framed it, that's a really good take.
He sees the house differently than it actually is, which we get to see the end with the table blocking his basement, but he haunts the basement. He haunts her and finally gets told by somebody, like, if you talk to her when she's asleep, she might actually hear you, kind of thing. And so I enjoy watching it from that aspect of it too.
That is an excellent take.
And it's one of those that we've mentioned before, is all the jackass people's like, oh, I knew he was dead the whole time.
No, you didn't.
No.
Although I did tell everybody in line at the theater when I came out. That was fun. He's dead the whole time.
What's great about that film, though, is that good twists don't just enhance the second viewing.
Yeah.
Bad twists ruin the...
Yeah.
So, and that is... Shyamalan is a very, very, very good screenwriter.
Terrible actor.
He's the best actor ever. He should have larger parts in his film.
Overdue an Oscar. The only better actor than him is Tarantino.
Yeah,
that's really.
They should have an Oscar like named after Tarantino or Shyamalan. Like, it's like the worst self-insert. Just call it the Hitchcock Award just to give it some like legitimacy.
Exactly.
They give it to M. Night Shyamalan. Be like, hey man, you were great. And
they have the EGOTs. They could call that the ego. The ego award.
You have to have a pretty large ego to think that people want to like listen to what you have to say. Let's bring it on home, guys. I don't blame it. You don't think Shyamalan's a good writer?
No.
Really?
No, only movie he ever made that's worth watching is Sixth Sense. Every one of them, all the rest of them are.
And I'm going to have to disagree. Unbreakable is a pretty
Unbreakable is
it's a terrible movie.
Oh man.
I like Signs despite the bad water.
Also, terrible movie.
I think Signs is a fantastic film.
It's a fantastic character study.
Yes, it is like a feature length Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
And I will also say I like Lady in the Water.
I do too. Jason and I
I've
are
never
one
seen
mind
that,
of that.
so-
Lady
I haven't
in the
even seen
Water.
it. Yeah.
It is. I like it. It takes itself a bit too seriously.
Yes.
Once again, Shalaman casting himself as the guy who's supposed to write the next big piece of art that's supposed to change the world.
Basically, he's writing the next Bible or The Secret. Yeah. He's going to be on Oprah next week.
But what I love about it, it's very much a movie that talks about tropes of those kinds of movies.
It is
straight up.
Yeah, it's a movie about storytelling, and if you can watch that film and take away from it what a good screenplay, it really is just very instructive of how to tell a good story and in a fun and interesting way.
Yeah. And it plays with those tropes.
Yeah, it's a fairy tale. Like you don't watch it thinking like, well, that wouldn't happen. It's like, well, yes.
It's a fairy tale.
It's like getting mad at Willow. Acorns can't turn you into stone. It's like, yes, you're a genius, sir.
M. Night Shyamalan's whole career is a fairy tale. This is not.
Look, I'm still of the opinion that The Village may be be genius, but it may not be. It's
awful.
I am like on the razor's edge.
Nothing good about that movie.
The Village is a complicated movie because it is his closest to a haunted type movie.
Yeah.
And it's a fun take on it. I have a weird relationship with The Village because I figured out the twist and I don't know why, but it's a random line halfway through the movie. I'm like, oh, they're in modern times. and after that, was it when they said, let's go to Applebee's? No, it was like she's talking to that on DoorDash. She's talking to one of the older ladies in town, and she's like, "Oh, my sister was killed in an alley." And like for me, for some reason, that line, I'm like, "Oh, because in New York City, this is a modern day movie," and I don't know why that movie put that in my head. That line did that, but my two issues with that I struggle with The Village is that at the beginning they show the grave markers and there's like 14 whatever. Mm-hmm. The only reason that was there was to lie to the audience because it wouldn't matter if it said 1972 to the kids because they don't know what 1972 is. If it's still pioneer times, you're like, yes, 1972. They'd be like, okay, yeah,
they don't have the knowledge that the audience has. So that was kind of cheap. And then
like M. Night Shyamalan's whole shtick is this kind of crap. Though,
well, the thing is, like, okay, there's these monsters in the woods, but they're really not monsters. It's the elders dressed up. But at the end, it's kind of like if the ending is that the elders really were the monsters because they were so afraid of the real world that they were robbing these children of medicine and truth. Then it's like, oh, there really are monsters and it really was the elders, but it's not the costume.
This is a good chance. So every time we have a guest on here, we always ask them to describe their favorite brick pit. So actually this would be a good chance if you wanted to throw one out.
I've worked in oil and gas and it's more of a theme of brick pits. I've seen it in some of the newer Die Hard movies. 30 Days of Night, don't even get me started on that movie and the Arctic. But if a villain's like, I'm going to make your safety valves fail. It's like, thanks. Good. Because a safety valve fails to the safe position. Like they're just going to go closed. Or if it's a vent valve, it's just going to go open and vent to the safe place. Like you need to make the outlet valves fail and have somebody inside sabotaging the manual valves above safety. Like, come on, that doesn't make any sense at all. Like was one of the biggest things that ruined certain movies for me. Also, there aren't people just drinking booze on most oil and gas facilities or rigs, and they aren't unmanned ever. You don't just run an oil well or a rig with nobody on it. It doesn't happen.
Well, we learned that in Armageddon. You need a Bruce Willis to run the show.
Yeah.
Armageddon may be the most accurate oil
rig movie ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hands down.
That falls underneath a category of brick pit that we've talked about is like if you ever had a job in a particular area Then you start realizing all the BS that movies and TV
Oh, yeah.
do about
Cops hate cop dramas. Doctors hate medical dramas. It's the expertise brick pit. So
lawyers hate everything but my cousin Vinny, because they'll tell you 100 times, oh, they should have said law school. It's like, you probably went to a pretty bad law school if you're watching movies.
Yeah, that's he's not a lawyer.
A lot of money to go to law school.
If your professor pulls out the wheeled cart with the VHS on it, it's like, today we're going to watch A Few Good Men before you go take the bar exam. You're not at a good law school.
It starts out as a Bill Nye the Science Guy, and then the screen gets blurry, and then it's A Few Good Men because he's taped over it off of TBS.
Yeah.
So, John, what I learned from you just then is that you would actually make the perfect Bond villain because you know all the ways to disable the safety feature.
Oh yeah.
Let's take this moment to take a little break for our advertisers, and then we'll come back and finish things out with our choices and maybe some bad movies. So. Hey, this is Josh over at the Brick Pit. I just want to tell you about Anchor.fm. This is where we upload all of our shows. This place is great. It's free. Their creation tools allow you to edit your podcast right from your computer or phone. They'll distribute everything to Spotify and Apple Podcast. You can make money from ads, no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get started. Thank you. And we're back. Hopefully that you bought whatever we're selling, because we totally believe in it, totally behind it. 100%. Whatever that was is the best of that category.
And if we advertised a podcast, it's probably our favorite other than our own. So.
It is. That is the most amazing podcast that I am talking about right now.
Unless it's anything that John's associated with.
John, our new producer. Are there any maybe any unconventional style haunted house films that spring to your mind?
I've always been a fan of Event Horizon. It's just a fantastic, absolutely a haunted house, but also with the space aspect, but it meets all the good tropes. And
see, the haunted house is a spaceship.
Yeah.
Well, there is Amityville in space is a real thing.
Right, exactly. And Jason X? Which one was it? Horror movies in space? Yeah. I've always been curious, was that ship haunted from the get-go? Or was it only as soon as they fired up the drive, testing it for the first, to take the trip for the first time? Because wait, you guys never tested that drive before the first flight? Yeah. That wasn't sitting on a platform somewhere. You're like, hey, let's make a test run of this, and there's just a haunted test platform now. It's a hell dimension, on the other side of the moon.
There's a bunch of haunted experiments in a lab somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Don't open that petri dish. It's haunted.
The practical effects in that film are amazing. Oh, yeah. And it's hard to tell somebody who's never seen it. It's like, oh, it is.
I've never terrifying.
Seen it. It's got great effects.
So tell me about this movie. I've never seen it, really. So part of the pitch is you got to set it up.
Yeah.
We won't tell you the end because this is a time where, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So John, you got an elevator pitch for Event Horizon?
Yes. It is a haunted house movie in space with fantastic effects after the first 2 minutes.
Are there puppets?
The first 2 minutes are the worst computer generated effects ever in a film that big. It's like, oh yeah, ignore those first 2 minutes, and once they get to the practical stuff, and it's got a great cast too.
Sam
Neill, Jason Isaacs, it is Jolie Richardson, Kathleen Quinlan. The list goes on and on and on, and it is.
It's one of the few films that really, it's easy to get scared when you're a kid. And we've talked in the past about like kid scared, there's, once you become an adult, you don't get that just sheer straight up terror that you get when you're a kid, that the just irrational, total, all consuming fear without drugs. Don't do drugs.
the thing about this is the weird thing. It was Paul W.S. Anderson, and I think this is probably his best film ever.
Hands down.
Mortal Kombat comes in right below it, but yeah.
Well, yeah, because Mortal Kombat is exactly what you wanted out of that.
Yeah,
movie.
He did. He's the Resident Evil guy, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, like,
man, that was a pretty tepid. Everyone was like, yeah.
I mean, okay. To be fair, the first one pretty good.
Yeah.
It starts off like I said. It looks like a regular sci-fi movie, and it changes as it goes along. And then suddenly you got like this Clive Barker Hellraiser crap coming.
Oh yeah.
Huh.
Oh yeah.
It's a bait and switch on the level of From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it starts out very much you're expecting one thing, and then like when they start going, you're
don't stop.
Right. You're like, okay, it's not going to be crazier than this. Oh, it is. Okay. But this is it. This is as crazy as it's going to get. And you just keep it's really an unsettling, and it's a scary movie. Like,
does it hold up? A lot of those mid '90s movies just don't hold up.
I watched it as an adult, and it was a scary movie.
Like I said, it's got some bad CGI in it, but it's mostly practical effects. And there's this one set piece actually. It's like the umbilical from the front of the ship to the engine room. And it's like this spinning hallway with like spikes and everything. It's really, they actually built it. And even the actors were talking about, because there's the scene, they have to run down this hallway.
Yeah. And the walls are spinning in two directions. And they're like, it's hard to, equilibrium gets messed up when you're running.
Yeah, they're talking about it's difficult to run because your brain just totally goes to pot on you. You don't know which way is up, and they have to get to a certain point before a dude with the flamethrower shoot that up.
Adam, don't watch it with you.
No,
she's not. Like she's watched The Thing, and she's 12.
About that, thereabouts.
I would not watch Event Horizon. Yeah,
I always look up the IMDb's before I show her anything, and sometimes I miss the mark. So sometimes I miss the mark. Sometimes I over anticipate. We watched Poltergeist together recently, and that was okay. I mean, that's not bad,
No.
But we also watched The Shining, and that was not good. So,
Daddy, what's that man doing with that guy in the bear suit?
That actually, we don't have to dwell on that. But that scene is so quick that it just it didn't register, right?
Daddy, why is Jack Nicholson leering at that woman in the tub?
By that point in the movie, you're like, if you're that age, you're so terrified.
You had terrified your child to the point where she was blacking out.
Basically,
I got it.
And actually, there is a great Shining call out in Event Horizon too.
Oh yeah,
a direct pull almost.
The weird thing about whenever you watch things with your kids is that you see it through their eyes. Like you watch it and you're like, as an adult, I've seen this movie 10,000 times. And now I'm watching it with this kid next to me. And I'm like, oh crap, I completely forgot this scene is in this movie. Because to you, it doesn't even matter. Like your brain is like nothing, but then when you just got this kid, you're like, crap. And then by the time you realize it, it's over. Like it's already happened. And you're like, well,
an hour into A Clockwork Orange, I was like, this might've been a mistake.
And I think most of the folks, I mean, this is very relatable. I think most of the folks who listen to this show
don't let their kids watch whatever they want.
Are in a demographic where they love movies, and they also want to share that love with their kids as soon as possible. And so, at least in my case, that means that I sometimes push the boundary of what is probably like age appropriate.
Oh yeah,
because I want her to see this thing that's really cool right now. Right. As soon as she can, I want her to be able to experience that so we can talk about it, so she can have this fun thing and I'll be honest with you, though, there's an interesting thing about it, because if you miss the window, right? If you miss the window on something that you enjoyed, for example, as a kid, and then they age out of that, you'll never get it back.
So it's better to be too early than too late.
Yeah, that really is true. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but that really is true, because
or at least that's what he keeps telling his wife.
Well, no, I'll be honest with you, because what happens is that once they reach an age of like truly cynical, truly jaded, and nothing can surprise them anymore, then you got to wait that out till they're in their 20s. So
or 30s even. I mean, there's certain things like, damn it, this is a good movie. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. You gotta
there is a point in your life where it's like with music, like when I started to get in my late 30s, that you're like, Bob Seger is good.
I was the jerk though.
Turns out maybe I was being a little
was right
elitist.
the whole time. Crazy old man. That crazy old wizard.
I don't know if that's an effect of like as you get older, you're like, I am going against the wind, Mr. Seeger. Or if because it's like, when you're young, you rebel, especially with something your parents want to show you.
Yeah.
So Adam, I still disagree with showing a 6-year-old Porky's.
Much less the entire trilogy in America.
No, Porky's 2 is fine.
For the investigators, for the investigators listening to this episode, that did not happen.
Prank call. Prank call.
Prank call. False red flag. No,
I do want to say, getting back to Event Horizon, though.
We were talking about that.
No, Jason. I want to tell you because Josh just said something. There's this Mark Twain quote. It says, "When I was 14, my father was such an idiot that I could hardly stand to be around the old man. But when I got to 21, I realized that how much he had learned in the last 7 years." Now, Jason, we can talk
that guy
about
you went to high
Horizon.
school with. Who is that?
Yeah, Mark Twain. Yeah, he's a funny guy. Yeah, he's a good guy.
What I'm saying is, if you haven't started following Sam Neill on Twitter yet, you need to, just because Sam Neill's just an awesome guy. But also with the latest news that they've had, the pictures of the black hole at the center of the galaxy, his tweet to that is like, been there, done that.
Nice.
Jason, you're on Twitter. You don't follow the Brick Pit.
I just wait for people to post the stuff from Twitter on the Facebook page.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Back to Event Horizon, just to finalize things here. It is interesting that I didn't think of that as a haunted house film until it was in this context, and I was like, that 100% is a haunted house film.
Oh yeah,
in space. Wow. Well, it gave me such a greater appreciation for already a great film that
it's weird that I've never seen that. It sounds like right up my alley. So
a haunted house film in space is right where it's at, and I wonder the haunted house film doesn't really break out of that mold very much, which is probably why Event Horizon is so great, because I can't honestly think of any other example.
Well, John said Ghost Ship earlier.
Yeah.
And there's another one I can't remember the name of, but it's like a World War II submarine.
Oh yeah.
It's really good too. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. But you do have some of these little kind of standouts. What gets me about this movie is I didn't realize it until reading on Wikipedia that it was a box office failure.
Oh yeah,
because it seemed like everyone I knew went and saw it and was like,
yeah,
that's the coolest movie ever.
Yeah.
Like multiple times.
Because it came out right about the time Starship Troopers did. I remember because I saw those two back to back. Yeah, both of them were just revelations. Like, wow, I was not expecting either of these movies to be what I loved so much.
There's nothing better than being surprised like that. And Event Horizon certainly fell into that.
I would love to say Event Horizon is my best surprise, hands down. The main movie that I had no idea what it was. My college roommate came and said, "Hey, you want to go see The Matrix?" Oh, I had never heard of it at all. And it was like, okay, let's go check it out.
I'm going to say this, the Matrix, the marketing campaign for that was so just awesome, because the marketing campaign is, what is the Matrix? Yeah. They didn't give away any of that information. So when Neo actually wakes up in the facility and is, spit out and everything, that was honestly a surprise.
Oh, hell
to
yeah.
me.
Okay.
Like, I'd never expected that, and you don't get that too often.
No, well, it was the same with Dusk Till Dawn, and like what's great about good films like that is like there really is like this social contract that's still in place where people won't spoil that because it was a new Tarantino film. That's all. Honestly, that's all I knew about it. I didn't read Vanity Fair, and it was kind of pre super saturation of the internet. It was like, oh, Tarantino's got a new film, and oh, George Clooney's in it. Great. So we went and saw it. We're watching it. I'm like, oh, and then like when the twist happened, I wanted to like jump up and just start running around screaming because I was like, it's a vampire movie. It's a vampire movie. I was flipping out because that is not what I expected. And I
think what works so well for that, it's a Tarantino script, but it's Robert Rodriguez directing it.
Yeah. And he does action much better.
Yeah, his direction style really just fit that like a glove.
Yeah. I will say I like that, Tarantino is a good example. I am enjoying more and more when movies just go all in on like the conceit. So like Inglourious Basterds, it's like, oh, okay, this is fun. They're going to try and do this like, oh no, they do it at the end. Okay, I see. This is not history. This is just like, what if? And same with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, 10 Cloverfield Lane. It's like, oh, is 10
it? 10 Cloverfield Lane was
Yes,
was
it
amazing.
is. It absolutely is.
And I will say this. I think actually revealing that there were aliens, it was the wrong way to go with that ending.
Oh yeah,
I disagree, but tell me your reasoning, Jace. That's interesting.
I enjoyed it so much more before the alien reveal. It works better more as a psychological, and I understand. I'm not saying it's wrong, even though it is wrong. To have John Goodman's characters like, oh no, he's not insane. It's like, no, he's still insane.
Right.
I think that gets kind of looked over with the alien reveal. It's like, no, he's still insane.
That's what I loved about the movie is that both things are true.
Right. Yeah.
There are aliens, and this dude is insane.
Completely
so it's
insane.
like, and
that's a great plot device.
You are stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, oh, great. Because let's face it, the people that would survive, preppers aren't. I know I'm alienating a good quarter of our audience here, but preppers may not be.
You can refer to them as our kind. As Josh. You Kid Rock and the preppers.
Those of us in the Kid Rock society.
John, I got a question for you. Since you brought up the Matrix,
you want preppers? I live in Utah. It is part of the culture here. So yeah.
I got a question for you, John, since you brought up the Matrix. First of all, I consider the first Matrix one of my handful of near perfect films. I think the way it was for going in cold, having seen it before. Great movie to see with your kids for the first time, by the way. The first Matrix.
Yeah.
Especially because at this point it's so far removed from time, they have no basis for knowledge. There's no spoilers for them.
They haven't seen the parodies that we got afterward.
None of that. Yeah. And so here's the way you set that up. By the way, if you got a preteen kid or a teenage kid, you go, look, this is a documentary.
Well, my kids would go like, what is that telephone thing?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's so many questions about
that. Modem?
My question for you is, have you seen the newest one and did you like it?
Yep, I have. I did like it. I think it was what they could do. Like I like the way they were like, all right, this is happening whether we are part of it or not. So let's make fun of the fact that this is happening whether we're part of it or not.
I loved it. I'll just go out there. I loved it. I thought it was the best. I thought it was the best that they could possibly have done with what they had.
Yeah.
And I really liked the way they approached the material. I loved it.
And the satirical nature, like they threaded that needle pretty dang
perfectly.
Well.
Yeah. It's great. As far as I'm concerned, there's The Matrix, and then there's this newest movie, and nothing else has ever been made.
Yeah.
That's
the Animatrix.
That's in general.
I'll say
that's
the
not just Matrix movies. That's just in general.
In general. Yeah. That's good, Jason.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I know we brushed upon haunted house films, so if you
peripherally talked about the theme of this episode.
if you want to shout out on Facebook or Twitter about what your favorite haunted house film is, we'll say we already recorded the episode, so why are you telling me this? But but I guess, we may care. Jason, we have a great reveal this week, right? So why don't you tell everybody that?
We sure do. We have a brand new logo. It's debuting with this episode, made for us by Drew Ryan. You can find him on Facebook at Drew Ryan Art. That's DREWRHIAN Art.
No, we all love the logo, and Drew does great work. Yeah. So reach out to him, inundate him with so much work that he curses our name
and pays us royalties.
Because the great pitters out there amass an army unseen. They blot out the sun for graphic design.
Then we'll podcast in the dark.
That's right. All right, well, I want to thank John. Where can people find you?
Find us on Twitter at Open Pike. That is the main account for Open Pike Night, or at Greenshirt87 is the Green Shirt Newbies Trek Through the Next Generation account. And I am on Twitter at John T. Bolds.
And listen to John's shows. They're really good. Again, I cannot speak highly enough of Green Shirt.
Thank you.
It is such a great Trek podcast. I love the premise. Love the chemistry.
Yeah. And Cam, I am a latecomer to that show relatively. Cam talked about it with me when he first started a bit, but he's been podcasting for 5 years now.
Oh, wow.
And so, with the release frequency of Green Shirt, it's like, yeah, he's got more than 100, almost, 120 episodes of podcasting under his belt. And it's been good to see how it's evolved and become part of it.
Yeah, and both your shows really are well produced, which is why I was surprised that you seated to come on our show, which is the Mickey Mouse Hour. We're recording through tin cans and string over here.
I will say, Cam told me, he's like, man, I love the chemistry listening to you guys. It is a very fun, just natural, light. It's great chemistry and great to be a part of it. So thank you for having me on, and we'll see you in a couple days for Open Pike Night.
Oh yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, you wanna quip us out with your
I'd be happy to.
zaniness?
First, I want to say I've never listened to the Green Shirt podcast, but I recently heard that it's very good, and that the producer's excellent on it. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. So.
If you want to pick an episode to start with, I think all of the main Green Shirt crew's favorite is Identity Crisis. When I don't know if you've seen TNG, is when Geordi starts turning into an alien.
Oh yeah,
that is one of the best episodes of Green Shirt.
Yeah, I'm not going to
place to start.
And just to put this out there for all listeners picking up a new podcast, never start with the first episode.
Jesus God, no.
Yeah. Except Open Pike. We're doing pretty good on that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's only 3 episodes in. So
yeah, exactly.
You've not had time to ruin it yet. That's the problem. All right, folks. Well, it's been great having John on the show. If you would like to comment about how terrible he was, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
You can either contact him on his own social networks, which he's already mentioned, or you can reach out to us, which is the best way to do that is either on our Facebook or Twitter accounts at the Bricked Pit Podcast.
What was that, Adam?
That was the Bricked Pit Podcast. Thanks, Jason. Or you can email us at brickedpit@gmail.com. Or we prefer, if you want to leave us a voicemail so we can play it on air, that's anchor.fm/brickedpit.
It's fun and easy. I've done it.
Yeah. And until next time, keep, keep salt on your windowsills and keep the ghost out. We'll see.